All right, good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Virtual Biotech with your teacher and host, Mr. Aguilar. All right, guys, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to walk us through how to register for the Genes in Space mentoring sessions. I know a lot of you guys did it last week. Wonderful job. Those of you who didn't, this week is going to be the most important of the 3 sessions. So please, if you have not registered, go ahead and do that. We will have one session tomorrow. That is with my A1, my A3, and my B10 classes. Wednesday will be my B8, Miss Brown's A1 and A5, and then Thursday will be B8, B10, and B6, Miss Brown's classes. Those will all be at 1 o'clock. All right. So those of you who have not registered, let's go ahead and you're going to go to your Teams page. We're going to click our Biotech Team tab, and you're going to scroll up a little bit, and you should see this right here that has the information for the Zoom mentoring session. All you got to do, and again, each one of you will have a different day. I'm just going with my A1 class. So you would come right over here, click this link, says welcome, you're invited to join a meeting. All right. We click the link, it brings us here, first name, last name, email address, confirm the address. Go ahead and tell it you're not a robot. Then you're going to click register. Now, in a few minutes after clicking register, you should receive an email. So you're going to go to your email, and you'll have an email that looks just like this. It'll be sent by Dr. Sweeney, say Genes in Space Mentoring, and this is your confirmation email. If you scroll down a little bit, here is the join link. See where it says join from PC, Mac, Linux, iOS, or Android? I think most of us, I don't think anyone here is using Linux, but you can use your cell phone or your computer or your Mac. All you're going to do is click that link. You click it like around the time when it's supposed to be. So again, if you were going to have your meeting tomorrow at 1, click it when it gets close to 1. It'll bring you into a waiting room, and then we will bring you into the session. Again, if anyone has any trouble registering or needs some help, let me know. But again, it's really pretty simple stuff. All right, so today, in this week's mentoring session, we will be dealing with our rough draft proposals for the Genes in Space project. So to see a little bit of what that looks like, I built the form earlier today. I will be posting it momentarily. Okie dokie, here we go. Genes in Space. Okay, I'm trying to figure out where did that just go. I had it. There we go. Interactive lesson, Genes in Space brainstorming. Where is my form? There we go. Okay. So this is what the form is going to look like. This is an exact replica of what the Genes in Space proposal will be. Excuse me. So first thing we're going to need to do is you're going to need to describe your project in tweetable form. Anybody who has Twitter will know what a tweet is. If you don't have Twitter, it really doesn't matter. A tweet is simply a very short explanation of your project. So it says 140 characters. Think about that as basically a short sentence. So really, really briefly, tell us a little bit about what your project is about. Now, I'm just going to kind of use an example of bone density, because as I go through this, it'll just be easy for me to have an example, and that's when I kind of go to. So one thing some of you guys might be talking about could be, okay, when you're up in space, there's no gravity, therefore there is no resistance on your bones, and your bones start to break down. So a lot of times when astronauts are up in space for a very long time, when they come back to Earth, their bone density is much less than it used to be before. They have to do a lot of strength training exercises, calcium supplements, stuff like that. And even if they do it in space, they still lose bone density. Because again, there's a lot of different factors, but lack of gravity is one of them. So if you were trying to study the genes associated with bone mass and bone density up in space, for your tweetable project, it could be something as simple as, in this project, I am going to study the genes associated with bone density in hopes that we may be able to cure this ailment for astronauts in space. Simple as that. Now, the second thing here says, describe the scientific problem you propose to address. What is the question you're trying to answer? What makes it significant, relevant, or interesting? So in this case, you're going to take your project, and this is where you're going to describe your testable question a little bit. Why are you asking this question? Why would people want to know about it? Why is it interesting? So again, in the example I was using about bone density, This is a really big problem because imagine if we're trying to go to something like Mars where it could take years to get there. Years and years of being in space. By the time we got to Mars, all of a sudden we'd have no bones left, or we could crack bones, you could be injured. Lots of bad things could happen if we lost significant bone density on longer space travel missions. So you could kind of describe that a little bit. Describe why bone density is important. Maybe you could go into osteoporosis a little bit. Talk about how, traveling to Mars or longer space travel would have more drastic effect on our bones and what that could lead to. Get into a little bit of detail, do a little bit of research. Doesn't have to be long, no more than 200 words. That's basically one page, double space typed is like 200 to 250. So as long as it's less than a page, don't go into any crazy stuff. Just give us a summary of kind of what you've learned, what you're trying to do, why it's interesting, etc. Just like when we did the science fair, guys, this really is not that much different. The cool thing with this, though, is that since you're not going to be doing the experiments, you are not limited to anything. You can do anything you can think of, any question you have, anything at all. All we're doing is proposing. We're not actually going to do it. So that's kind of cool. And right here is where you're going to state your hypothesis and your objectives. You should have already done that last week. This is something that will be great to go over with your mentors again. Maybe you can refine it a little bit, but as you should know, the hypothesis is an educated guess or an answer to your testable question. So again, talking about bone density, maybe you start to do some research and you find out certain genes associated with bone density, so you want to study them. Maybe if we can keep these genes active or these genes inactive, we can prevent bone density loss experienced by astronauts. I did a little research myself, and there is a gene I think I talk about down here, a gene called DARC that actually has, or DARC, I don't know if it's pronounced DARC, seems like it might be, that actually has to do, it codes for a protein that helps break down bones. So they think that that might be something that happens up in space, that because your bones are not being forced upon, because there's not resistance on your bones in space, your body might flip a gene on that begins to code this DARC gene, this DARC gene, that basically tells your body, hey, the bones don't need to be as dense as they are because there's less stress on them. Let's go ahead and start breaking it down so we can utilize the calcium and take some stress off the overall system. Unfortunately, that's not a good thing for us, so if we could find a way to turn that gene off, that'd be wonderful. All right, so that will be our hypothesis, again, an educated guess, and describe the objectives. What are you trying to do with this experiment? What exactly are you trying to figure out? Again, no more than 200 words. Number 4 says, explain how the unique environment aboard the ISS is required to test your hypothesis. What conditions of the space station are essential for your research? So again, the ISS is the International Space Station. It is a floating lab in space where there's a lot of great scientists, some of the top scientists from all over the world who do all kinds of different experiments up there related to space. Now, since this is the Genes in Space project, and your project will inevitably be dealing with space travel in some way, shape, or form, you're going to need to be doing those, or the experiments will need to be carried out in space because that's the environment that we're talking about. So essentially, you can just kind of say something like that. I gave a little bit of an explanation right here that you can read. I'm not going to read it for you. You guys can read it on your own. But yeah, just explain that your experiment needs to be done in space, aboard the space station, because you are dealing with certain elements of space. Maybe it's lack of gravity. Maybe it is cosmic radiation. Maybe it is a claustrophobia aspect, being in a tight, cramped conditions all the way up in space. Maybe it has to do with the heights issue. All kinds of different fresh air, oxygen, lack of fresh produce, things like that. So you're just going to talk about a little bit about why, yeah, it would need to be on the space station because it's a project based in space, and that's the best way to collect data. Okay, the 5th one is to outline your experimental plan. So how will you use PCR to test your hypothesis? Specify, for example, the samples you'll analyze, controls you'll use, possible experimental outcomes, etc. So this is kind of, if you were to do this experiment, how would you do it? So again, I kind of go through a little example right here that you can read on your own, but essentially let's just remember PCR, polymerase chain reaction, is a way to make billions and billions of copies of DNA from a single strand, essentially. So remember, if you want to study something like DNA, something tiny, tiny, tiny like that, you're going to want as many copies as possible because the more copies you have, the easier it is to study. Now, in the example I gave above, considering that DARC, that DARC gene, If that was something you wanted to study, that's what you could use PCR for. You could find the segment of the DNA that codes for that DARC, that dark gene, make tons and tons of copies of it, and then you'd be able to study it. And again, eventually, maybe you can find a way to turn it off. For some reason, it turns on when you're up in space. If you could find a way to turn that off, not only could you cure diseases like osteoporosis, but you could really push forward space travel to make it a reality. That'd be wonderful. That's what I like to call a billion-dollar idea right there, guys. So again, you're going to need to do a little research, figure out the thing you want to talk about concerning space, try to find a gene associated with whatever that problem is. Maybe there's a bunch of genes, find at least one gene associated with it, and that's kind of what you can talk about. You would use PCR to make more copies of it. That way it makes it easier to study. So you can talk about that a little bit right here. Again, use Google for your research. And again, you can kind of read the examples I put there. Those are really the only main questions. How did you hear about genes in space? Most of you probably found out about it from me or Dr. Sweeney. If you'd heard about it before, you can write that. And a citation section. If any of you guys use specific information from any kind of research sites or anything on the internet, make sure you cite them. You can use easybib.com or one of those other citation tools. It's not a mandatory thing. It is optional, but if you take any information directly from the internet, you want to make sure you cite it properly. So this is the form that I'm going to put up. This will be due at the end of the week. Again, guys, do not attempt to do this form until you until you have spoken with your mentors. Now, if you have some ideas and you want to start writing some stuff down, that's great. You can talk about it with the mentors, but make sure you use their expertise before you fill this out because it's really going to help you. Now, when we actually submit our proposals, not this week, but next week, I will show you guys how to log into the website, and it will look exactly like this. So you can literally take your responses here, copy and paste them into the Genes in Space site when we get to that part, and you're good to go. Final thing, and this is actually in the, the weekly packet for this week, oddly enough. It is an example of an honorable mention winning proposal. Now, as I say in the learning packet, this is written by a high school student, so do not get intimidated when you see it like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff here. I don't know what any of this stuff means. It's all good, guys. You guys are in 8th grade. A lot of you are very, very intelligent. Actually, pretty much every single one of you that I've ever talked to or teach is just, brimming with intelligence and all kinds of good stuff. Doesn't mean you're going to understand these things because we've only really briefly gone over them. And that's okay. But at least you can kind of read this. It's the exact same thing I put up, project in tweetable form, scientific problem, hypothesis, etc. Just to kind of get an idea, okay, what did these people do? This is a winning entry. This is what they did. Maybe it'll help you to kind of get the juices flowing on your own project, okay? So again, I'm not going to read all this out loud because that would take time that, frankly, I don't have. Or you, for that matter, because I've only got 15 minutes to record this video, and we're at the 13-minute mark. But again, guys, go through it, check it out. Like I said, I did put the file on your weekly packet for this week, the week 5 packet. You can go ahead and download it, give it a look, get some ideas from it. Any of you guys want to talk to me about it, that's wonderful. I would say let's reserve our specific questions until after your mentorship session because I don't want to touch on stuff that they're already going to touch on. So once you have your mentor session, once you've gotten all your stuff on, please reach out to me, reach out to Dr. Sweeney. You can chat both of us up through the Teams page. We would love to help you guys out. This is one of our areas of expertise, especially Dr. Sweeney. She has her PhD in genetics and whatnot. Wonderful, wonderful research, guys. My degree was in biology, but again, also has to do with all of this kind of stuff. Either way, all right, guys, it's been great talking to you. I will get back with you soon. Anybody needs anything, you know how to get to me. And keep it frosty, guys. All righty.